I'm hopeful for 2025 that we start seeing a little bit more inventory, that we start seeing these interest rates come down. But so far, neither.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt. That is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, in today's episode, we've got an action-packed episode. We actually have an outline. We actually have a large list of topics to cover. So I say let's just jump right into it. First, we need to start with the devastating news out of Los Angeles with the wildfires in the Palisades that are forcing tens of thousands to evacuate. I think I saw something like 30,000 people, evacuating. The wildfires are fueled by the strong Santa Ana winds, the low humidity, and the ongoing drought conditions. Now, obviously, whenever there's any sort of real estate natural disaster going on, we always like to touch on that and wishing our best for those out in LA. And, LA doesn't ever strike me as a place that I would necessarily avoid buying a house because of a natural disaster. Now we're talking about the Palisades. This is like, the creme de la creme. So I think there's a monetary reason I'm not buying a house in the Palisades. But what are just your thoughts on LA and wildfire? Because there have been wildfires in the past, but it seems like more recently there have been some pretty significant ones.
Yeah, and it's so funny or not funny, but this is devastating. But it's strange when you think about the different areas that are affected by different natural disasters, right? And we have California, you're always hearing about the wildfires, and Florida and, the southern coast, you're always learning about hurricanes. And these are the things that number one, affect real estate values, but also the thing that you need to think about. And this is crazy if you actually start thinking about it, is insurance, right? And so insurance companies, a lot of times, will have a blanket insurance policy, but then when you start digging into it, are you covered for a wildfire? Yeah, if your house catches on fire, you might be covered, but they'll have this clause in there that if it's a wildfire, then maybe you're not covered. Same thing with like flooding. Flooding, if it happens from one way, you're covered. If it happens from another way, you're not. And so these are the things, and I'm not sure, I don't know anything about fire insurance or wildfire insurance, or even if it exists, right? But I wonder if it does, and I wonder if there's a premium to that, because these are things that insurance companies could get around by certain language in those policies by saying, well, I'm sorry you're not covered by this because it's a wildfire. It came from a different area. It didn't start in your home. It started from outside of your home. So I wonder if there's that.
I've heard when it comes to floods, I've heard people say, don't say flood, say water intrusion from the outside. I don't know how you can, verbiage that for some sort of fire. But, in addition to this, I don't know when this narrative happened, but it seems like whenever there's a natural disaster or an issue and it happens to like well-off people or like the affluent neighborhood, the general response is, oh, they have insurance. Yeah. Or, oh, it's coming to them. I don't know when society turned into this callous kind of behavior of, oh, it doesn't matter because insurance will cover, or, oh, they can afford it. But I'm really not on board with that.
No, not at all. And think about these people that, all right, they're stars, right? But it took them so long to get to where they are. They've fought tooth and nail to get on a show that then affords them to become millionaires where they purchase this house. And maybe they purchased this house cash, but maybe their bank account is short because they purchased this house cash. I don't know. There's so many different scenarios, but if you're not getting the right insurance to cover you for when something catastrophic like this happens, you just basically lose everything. And so you see that a lot of these, you'll see a lot of these people not only lose their homes, but will they be able to rebuild? Will they be able to afford to rebuild? Will they have to sell the land? I don't know. And that's the scary thing. So everybody's human and everybody has their own ways of getting to where they are. They've all worked to get to where they are. There's a couple lucky people, but man, you got to think about how hard they worked or what they gave up to get to where they are. And so, yeah, I don't like the whole fact that people get on them and say, oh, well, they're celebrities. They have a lot of money. I mean, they're people.
Yeah, I mean, certainly headlines, sell clicks, but these are neighborhoods that are just burning to the ground. There's loss of property, loss of lifestyle, and probably end up being, loss of life as well. So, a little compassion can go a long way, Shawn.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to our next topic, the real estate market, specifically Northern Virginia, specifically first week. Now that it's January 8th, we are well into the first week, now into the second week of the real estate market. I've got my weekly market report from Bright MLS. This looks at the Mid-Atlantic region. What you need to know out there, fewer new listings to start the year, an 11% decrease from the same week last year. Buyers few and far between at the beginning of the year, so 6% decrease from the same week last week. And listing prices are still rising. So although there are fewer listings, although there are fewer buyers, listing prices, median list price is $405 in the Bright MLS service area of the Mid-Atlantic, a 6.6% hike from the same week last year. Now, obviously, this covers a large swath of area, but Shawn, what are you seeing the first week in the market?
Yeah, 100% low inventory. We talked about this on Monday on our Monday morning meeting, and typically what I do is we follow the Arlington market very closely just to see what inventory is doing, and we have a schedule of every week what is what. How many single family homes are on the market, how many under contract, how many condos under, and then different segments of Arlington. So we watch that pretty closely, and we are at the lowest of the year. And this is pretty typical. This is January, but to see that we're actually lower than normal it's disheartening. And that's why you'll start seeing prices increase, because there's just nothing on the market. And so it doesn't matter if you're selling a single family home in Arlington. It doesn't matter if you're selling a condo. Everything is pretty low throughout the board.
I've got some charts up from the Bright MLS. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll flash them up on the screen. So what we're looking at here, Shawn, is the statistics from 2021 to 2025. There's four other lines for the previous 4 years, and then there's one dot, for 2025. You don't even need to look at the key to know which line is which. When it comes to weekly showings, 2021 is far and above all of the other years. And then gradually 2022 is below 2023, 2024. And then finally, very down at the bottom is 2025. And throughout these charts, you see a similar concept as well. So you can say, hey, we're 8 days in, small sample size, large area, not much to draw from. But there is something to draw from this. It's not like there's this outlier. And, to be honest, 2025, I'm the most excited about a new market I think I've been since 2022. Okay, because remember, 2022 at the tail end, that was when interest rates spiked. 2022 they were down a lot, and then throughout the year they just ramped up. And so, heading into 2023, you're like, oh man, this is going to be a rough year, and kind of more of the same in 2024. But now that we're into 2025, I am optimistic. But I think we're off to maybe a rough first 7 days, I'd say.
Yeah, and a rougher start. And, the fun thing is when you look at this trend, and first of all, I can't even believe we're saying 2025. I feel like 2021 is kind of where my head is still. But I can't believe how quickly it's all going. But 2021, you have to think of if you're looking at this chart, you're going to see 2021 way above everything else. And then 22, 23, and 24, and 25, whatever. So why was it in 2021 that everything was higher? Number one, we were just kind of getting out of COVID, or maybe kind of in the midst, and people were like, hey, I'm sick of this lifestyle. I'm moving to the country. I'm moving. There was an exodus. There was a movement of real estate, and people were buying in different areas and getting out of their norm. Number two, there was also low interest rates. So people were just like, hey, I got free money, man. This is free money. I'm going to go buy. I can purchase a lot higher property. Inventory was still lower, but not as low as right now. And so people were just, the movement was much, much greater. Then we started 22, we saw the interest rates started going, and then 23 and 24. And so naturally we saw the quelling of the market, the slowing down, the quieting of the market. And a lot of people couldn't afford to move anymore. So they stayed in their houses. They're not selling as much. And so that leads us to today, where our inventory is low because interest rates still haven't come down. We were expecting them to come down. I think forces were trying to make them come down, but then there's other factors that are not, that's not so. So now people still aren't moving. There's not a lot of inventory. So interest rates, they thought, okay, 2025, we're going to do an application and we're going to get moving. And then they see the interest rates and they're like, no. So everything has slowed down. I'm hopeful for 2025 that we start seeing a little bit more inventory, that we start seeing these interest rates come down. But so far, neither.
It's crazy how fast time moves. I was just thinking 3 years ago, January 2022, I didn't know my wife. Okay, I was single, right? And then I got engaged, married, and now have a kid on the way.
Yeah.
A lot can happen in 3 years.
A lot can happen. I mean, I have my son's turning 4, and I can't believe he's turning 4. It's like insanity, it happens so quickly. So life happens quickly. That's the way I always say is like, hey man, don't wait. Don't wait to sell your property, or don't wait to make that big change, or don't wait for your property value to come up to X. Man, move for life, man, because it happens quickly.
So next topic is from Redfin News, which came out with a report recently that said more than 1/3 of homeowners say that they're never going to sell, Shawn.
Jeez.
Never. So 34% of U.S. homeowners say that they'll never sell their home. So you're talking about, inventory. Another 27% say they wouldn't consider selling for at least 10 years. Roughly 24% plan to sell in the next 10 years. While just 8% plan to sell in the next 5 years and 7% within the next 3 years. Never, 34%, never. I had to look up the word never just to make sure. Just never, not ever. That's a fourth of the house. Now, you can say, hey, I'm never gonna sell, but then
Stuff happens.
You get a divorce, right? Someone dies, right? You get a job offer. You want to move away from California, away from Florida. You want to move to California or to Florida. Shawn, what are your thoughts that 1/3 of people say that they're never going to sell?
Yeah, and that's the problem with single-family home living. Once you get into that single-family home and your kids start going to schools, you don't really want to move. It's a lot to move back and forth. It's a lot to move a whole household. And so most people, when they get into those single families and they get their family ingrained in the neighborhood and in the schools, you don't want to move. I mean, that's just the reality. And so most people, or you have to think it's probably the reality of it, is like once you get into the right house, it's big enough, you like the neighborhood, you're like, all right, I'm not going to move. So you can understand maybe 25%, but 30-some%, that's pretty high. Now you've got to think, all right, maybe 10% of those people will actually end up selling because of the factors we've just talked about. I mean, jobs, family, deaths, all that stuff. So life happens and things will change. But, the single family people will stay there. And that's why when you're marketing, like as a real estate agent, you're marketing different sectors. This is a long game. This isn't a short game. You have to continue to market and get yourself out there. And, you're marketing probably to 25 to 35% of people that will never move. But you know what? Those people could also see your marketing and say, hey, Joe, you're moving. Check out this guy or check out this person, because I get their mailers all the time, or I see them online all the time. So there's a way to market, and there's a reason to market, and you have to think, oh man, is it going to waste? Well, no, it's not. It's a ongoing thing that you have to continue to think about.
The report further says that 43%, almost half of baby boomers say that they'll never sell their house. Now, maybe once the house gets passed on, when they're no longer around, their kids sell, or maybe their kids move in. Shawn, I know you're firmly in the Gen X category, but
yes.
What if you receive this survey, okay, on your two houses, what would your answer be between never, more than 10 years, more than 5 years, 3 to 5, or within the next 3 years?
More than 10 years.
More than 10 years for both houses.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because number one,
not never.
Not never. No,
not never.
It's going to happen at some point, because what happens, I think, is once the kids grow up. So I got at least 15 years. My youngest son is only 4, so he's got to get through high school and into college, and then he's got to have a place to come back. And that usually is when you have your friends. And believe me, I have a 10-year-old daughter who, I was like, hey, could you move here? No, absolutely not. I'm not leaving Arlington. This is where my friends are. So you have to be cognizant of where these kids, how it's going to affect their lifestyle and life and their friendships, right? And so, for that reason, I would always stay. And the other factor is this is where my business is, and I love Arlington. I'm glad that I finally found Arlington and not found it, but like moved back, right? So I've lived all throughout the area, and Arlington, I lived in Falls Church, which was great, but there are certain factors that made me move. And I knew in my head that I wasn't going to be there forever. On this house, I'll be here a lot longer because this is where we decided to put our kids into school. And so I think what we want to do is get our kids through school and then into college, and then we'll decide whether and when we're going to move. So I think that, yes, it's 10 plus years, but I don't think it's forever. I'm never selling it.
It's not for forever.
Yeah.
So what happens once the kids are out of college? Where are you moving to?
I don't know. So, one of the things is I bought a beach house this year, and that beach house is co-owned, right, with my sister and my brother-in-law. And that was an important thing for us to do because we wanted a particular lifestyle for the summers and for our kids to be able to grow up in the summers having some sort of beach life. And that's what I always wanted growing up. I was kind of a beach bum. I lived at the beach when I was in college, during summers and things like that. And so I wanted them to have that. And so now with that house, I'm not intending to sell that for at least 10 years because I want my kids to grow up and enjoy it, and I want to enjoy it. But I think that now having that second house and knowing how great the beach is for me, I think I'll probably sell this house once I retire from real estate in the area and say, all right, I'm pulling back and my team keeps going and everybody else is selling, but they're making me money. No, I'm gonna sell my house, take the equity, and go buy something else at the beach.
I mean, your Arlington house Bodie's what, 4?
Yep.
So 20 years from now, he'll be 24. 20 years from now, your house is going to double in value.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, what if your kids want to stay in Arlington and want to afford a single family house? It's gonna be very challenging.
It's going to be very challenging. And that's the problem. And maybe that's the thing you have to think about is what is that equity to you? And that's how a lot of people afford places in this area. I mean, a lot of young people are relying on those baby boomer parents to sell their houses or take some equity out to give them. And let's face it, that's how a lot of people purchase their homes. So you have to think about that in the future. And so what I have done with my kids is I have different stock accounts and I have life insurance policies, and those policies are whole life policies that gain value. And so my plan is to have a thing that they don't know about. They don't know about these.
They don't watch the show?
Well, they will at some point.
Okay.
But maybe they'll find out. But, I invest in things for them, and hopefully they have a little bit of a nest egg so that they can have that down payment for the house. And then I can take my own equity and do with what I want with it. So there are ways to do that. I mean, I think about it all the time. When you look at the value, and last week Matt was like, hey, do you know your Zillow value? And I was like, I haven't looked at it in a year. And I would say that from the last time I looked at it, it's up $150,000 at least. So last year when I looked at it, I was like, oh, my value's low. Now I'm like, oh, it might be a little high, So Zillow estimates are all over the place. Anyways, that's my plan. I think I will end up selling it at some point, but you never know. You never know. Maybe that is just something that runs in the family and my kids end up living in the house or staying in. I don't know.
I thought you were going to be in the never category for the Arlington house.
No, I mean, it just all depends. I don't know how life is going to go in the next 15, 20 years. And so it could be a never, it could be 15 years, but it's at least 15 years.
I think I'm in the more than 10 years, but at some point for the Airbnb in Central Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I think at some point it'll make sense to sell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making money on it right now, but there is this not intrinsic, but there is this like sentimental value and a lot of there's a road to profitability.
Yeah, well,
there's a concept of a plan to profitability.
That was
Shawn.
your first property that you bought. There's always a sentimental thing to that. And
lot of mistakes. The first one being getting sentimental.
Well, yeah.
For an investment property, do not get emotional for an investment property.
I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's an investment property or not, or like a second home or things like that. You're going to get emotional about things. Once you start like flipping properties, then it's numbers game. But when it's a one or two or third property, it's still going to get emotional. And that's always going to drive people's opinion or people's thoughts on whether they should purchase or not. But the thing is, you're learning so much from this, right? And you have to take that into account. Okay, you're not making money on the Airbnb, but you're at least paying that mortgage by people renting it out. You're not probably losing too much, but you're gaining equity. You're gaining the experience. Yeah, you're learning by doing because you have to learn about basements and water flow and things that happen when you actually start renovating a property. and you dig into the walls and you learn that there's a lot more going on than you think. And so that's why that goes to those people that think that they can just go in and flip a property when they've never done it before. There are so many hidden costs in that. And by doing this, you've learned a ton so that the next purchase, you're going to be much more aware, because real estate agents can push people and say, or not push, but like educate people in the home purchase process. But what they can't, unless they've actually purchased a property, is the emotional side of things that you have to go through. And then the financial side of things that you have to go through once you purchase that property to see, and you find out what is actually wrong with the house and what you have to do to maintain it. So there's a lot that goes into it.
So, with that survey, interest rates are currently sitting at like 6.9%. And it got me thinking, like, would people's answer be different if interest rates were sitting at 2.5%? If they were sitting at 3%?
Yeah.
Like, what if interest rates were 2.5% and that survey went out? I was talking with a buddy. This was a while ago now. He bought in Reston. He said he got an interest rate of 2.75 or whatever. It was like my high school GPA, right? It was like high twos. And he said,
Mine too, buddy.
he said he's never going to sell. And, more power to him. And I think there's a lot of people out there that'll just never sell because the interest rates they got were so darn good, which brings us to the next article from CNBC, is that mortgage rates just hit their highest level since July, crushing application demand, Shawn. I thought that this was going to be the year where we would start to see some sort of drop in interest rates. Some people are quoting even over 7%. It's the highest rate since July 2024. Do you think maybe once we get past the inauguration, once we get like firmly into Q1, once there's no more snow on the ground, and I know snow has nothing to do with the darn interest rate, but at what point are we going to see these darn interest rates go down?
Oh man, and that's why it's so hard to predict this stuff. And I think we had one of our lenders on the show, and we're all expecting like 2025. Where are the rates going to be? And we're all guessing like, I think 4.5%.
Okay, we were not guessing 4.5%.
You were a little bit more wary.
I was higher.
Yeah,
there was someone else guessing 4.5%.
That was me,
I
and
don't
then
know
there was somebody else.
If it was you or
I was slightly
else.
conservative. Matt was very conservative on the numbers, saying that they were going to be in the 5s, 5.5 even. And I think Matt's going to be right on this so far as we're seeing. I mean, if we even reach the 5.5, that would be amazing at this point, because we're seeing that the government or the powers that be,
what
am I trying to say? The guys that
the deep state,
the Fed lowered interest rates, but I don't think as much as they expected. But then inflation numbers came out, and that was hurting, so in the end, the interest rates didn't go down at all. We were expecting them to go down. And when there is that inverse reaction, the rates actually go up and go up higher. And so now we're in this thing where we were expecting hopefully somewhere closer to 5, the low 6s, and now we're almost to 7. And so naturally that's going to stop everything. And so, yes, I think you're going back to your point that the baby boomers are like, we'll never leave. Yeah, I think it's partly because of interest rate. You have such an asset with a 2-3% interest rate. That's a huge asset right now to you. Why would you sell it? Why would you get rid of that? And the thing is, they've probably lived there a long time. Their interest is already paid up front. You pay that interest mostly up front. And so now it's mostly more your principal that's getting paid down as you get further into that mortgage. And so naturally it's an asset, and people are like, well, I'm never going to sell this thing. Even if I want to keep this, or I don't live here anymore, I'm going to keep this asset for my kids or for my family because it's such a huge asset. Yeah, it could be worth, like you were saying, in 20 years, $4 million. But think about what rent is going to be at that point, and we'll have no mortgage. And so then my kids could then live off of a rental for the future, right? Mm-hmm. And that could be my retirement. Instead of taking the equity out of that, that's just a money-making home. And that's why people buy real estate. In the future, prices go up, but also rentals go up, rental values.
I'm looking for excitement. I'm looking for optimism. This is like a little gut punch, when you see that mortgage rate applications fell 7% for the week and were 15% lower than the same week 1 year ago. So
15% lower.
15% lower than last year.
And that's what sucks, is because this is when everybody starts saying, this is the year. 2025 is my year. I'm going to do an application with a lender. And to see it falling because of interest rates, I think that's the main reason. It stinks, right? And that's a precursor to what we can expect in this market, all right? There's going to be maybe less buyers out there because of interest rates, but I think it'll be probably pretty similar to 2024 on the buyer side. But will we see the inventory? And that's what we really need. Inventory. Right now it's super low.
All right, Shawn, let's move on to our next topic. By the way, if you're enjoying this conversation, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already. My favorite story of the week has to be Walter White's house from Breaking Bad listed for sale for $4 million. Shawn, did you ever watch Breaking Bad? Are you a fan of the show?
I got to be honest. I've watched. I've never watched Breaking Bad.
Shawn,
I know. I'm totally out.
My
of
friend,
it. Isn't it crazy? But I'll tell you,
you got to get into Breaking Bad.
I do. I think. Let me tell you this.
Do you even watch TV shows?
I do, but you know what? I've been watching a lot more YouTube.
What's one TV show that you've watched from start to finish? This decade.
That would be one of those. I can't even think of the name of it, but it would be like a Netflix series, right? And so the whole series.
Just the name would be good.
I can't think of it. It was like a CIA thing. I'll think of it.
Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
But one thing I'll say is I'm really bad at remembering movies. So people are like, "Oh, you remember in this movie that this happened?" I'm like, "No, I got to go watch it again." I have to watch a movie like 3 or 4 times to ingest everything. So, anyways, my Breaking Bad story is that I watched the first 2 episodes, and you know those. I get this feeling, and when I start watching something, and I'm like, I don't enjoy watching it. My levels of like, don't do this. Please, why are you doing this? Like, go up, right? And That's exactly what happened to me. I had more anxiety by watching this guy for the first 2 episodes that I was like, why do I want to have anxiety watching a show? And so I was like, no more. I turned it off and I never watched another episode.
What's your Mount Rushmore of greatest TV shows of all time? Let's hear this.
My Mount Rushmore of greatest TV shows.
Yeah, just give me your top 3. I know, I think there's 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore, but just give me your top 3.
Again, it's really hard for me to think of because I don't really watch TV shows anymore.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I have a feeling that I'll have to carry this conversation.
Yeah, you really will.
So I love Breaking Bad, if you can't tell. I would definitely put it up there as one of the greatest TV shows of all time. Start season 1 to season wherever they ended up. There wasn't really a tail off. I was thinking about The Office, which was really good.
The Office was great.
As soon as Steve Carell left, it just tanked.
Why even?
It was not good. So for me, in any sort of 1A, 1B, 1C order, it's The Wire, it's Seinfeld, and it's Breaking Bad. I've tried to get into the Sopranos. I need to try again. I need to try harder again. But what I'm getting at here is it's not just me that thinks that Breaking Bad is one of the greatest TV shows of all time. It's millions of people out there that think it's the greatest TV show of all time. So much so that people make a pilgrimage to Albuquerque, New Mexico to see Walter White's house. Just see the outside. You can't go inside, obviously, because people are living there, but just to see the outside where everything was filmed. The famous pizza on the roof scene, him, with the what is it, Aztec or the Pontiac, whatever minivan that is. This is such an iconic piece of real estate from a TV standpoint. And they've listed it for sale for $4 million. Which is outrageous. The 1,900 square foot house is the estimated market value is $343,000.
Wow.
So, it's just a standard. There might even be just one bed. It's a 4-bed, 2-bath, just your standard run of the mill, crappy house, right? But it just has this lore. And, nothing strikes me more than what's gone on with the owner of this property. Are you familiar at all?
No.
So they allowed the pilot to be filmed, and it was so cool. And then they partnered with them.
Isn't it weird? Like, why was that house? Like, there's tons of them that look exactly the same. Why that house? Right?
And it got to a certain point where people were coming to the house, taking photos, where this lady, the homeowner, just turned, and everything has gone wrong since then. It's got a 3 out of 5 stars on TripAdvisor. People are constantly giving it a 1 star because what'll happen, Shawn, is you go up to the house and the lady just sits in her chair all day, all night, and then starts yelling at you if you get too close to the house, okay? So she's put up a gate, she's put up a fence, she's put up traffic cones, she's put up everything. You can't take a picture, at the house. You got to go across the street to take a house. She's in her little lawn chair, and she has, completely destroyed the experience for people that have traveled, sometimes across the country and other times across the globe to see this house. And she went on a recent local news segment and was on her best behavior, Shawn. And it's just this little old lady, and my mom bought this house and we grew up here, and we love our neighbors. And one time we had a scary incident, so we put up a fence and we kindly asked people to respect our privacy. But she has completely ruined the opportunity to capitalize on this. This could have been a monument. This could have been a freaking museum. This could have been, a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, when did Breaking Bad even end? Like 2003, 2013. Like this was a long time ago. And now 10 years, 12 years later, she's trying to capitalize on this by getting $4 million. I don't see it happening.
Yeah. $4 million is a lot of money, especially when it's worth under $400,000. What do you think the value would be? Like, what would you pay for it? Or what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, that's a good point, because there are diehards out there. I mean, you don't have to scroll far on, Zillow Gone Wild to see, the collectibles that some people have, or how into, Friends or Seinfeld or some of these like cult followings. Think about it this way. What if, I don't know, I'm trying to, like the Home Alone house, right?
Yeah, right.
That one always, captures headlines, and there's definitely some value there. Geez, I would say it's got to be worth at least, 3 times the amount. Now, they're trying to get 10 times the amount.
Yeah.
I don't think they can just move over the decimal point and call it a day. But I think that there could be $600,000 worth of value for someone who really wants to buy this property.
Yeah. Now, let me be devil's advocate on this. Imagine somebody comes to you and says, hey, can I film, this show at your house? You don't know how big it's going to be. You don't know, maybe it's just a pilot and you're like, okay, yeah, go for it. Right. And then all of a sudden the show becomes bigger than anything than you can imagine. And you didn't expect this, and you're just living in your house. And then all of a sudden it becomes a cult following, and people just are showing up constantly. And there's this thing called quiet enjoyment, right? When you purchase a house, when you live in something, it's called quiet enjoyment. You want to be able to live in that home without anybody, annoying you. And I think that we can all be against this lady and saying, well, why don't you let these people experience? They've come a long way. But at the same time, she sees this all the time. It's like being a celebrity when you didn't want to be a celebrity. And all of a sudden you can't walk through the streets because people are just like, oh my God, because they've never seen you before, right? They see you once and you're like, oh my God. And so this is the same thing that's happened to her house. Maybe she didn't expect it to be this bad. And then you have all the people that, some just want to come see it. But then there's people that want to jump on the roof and eat a pizza, or, you know what I mean? Like, you're always going to have those people that go beyond the lines. And that's what I want to be protective of this lady, and saying she's probably been through the ringer for this, and she just wants to live there quietly. And all of a sudden she's been inundated with people coming to see it constantly. And it's not just once a day, it's multiple times a day. Everybody's coming to see that house. And so you can understand where the frustration, how she can be frustrated at this, and why she would put up a fence, and why she would sit there on her front porch saying, get away from me, right? And so, yeah, I feel for the people that have gone there and didn't have a great experience, but I also feel for that person that now has their house as a movie prop, and it can't be fun.
Yeah, and once it goes, I don't even want to say viral because that's taken on a new term, but once Breaking Bad has reached this plateauic, part of TV lore, you can no longer live quietly.
Yeah.
It's just not an option. And during the interview with the local news station, her sales pitch, she let slip that 300 cars drive by her house. This isn't on a main road. You got to go back into the neighborhood. You got to, try to find the house. 300 cars a day.
Wow.
That's per day. So I don't, do I feel bad for her? I would if she doesn't, give the middle finger to everyone that wants to take a picture outside of her house, outside of her gate, outside of where she puts cones on a public street. To me, you got a couple options. If the TV show blows up, okay, either embrace it, you can be a jerk like she's doing, or you can sell it. Those are the options.
Yeah. Imagine being her neighbor. Her neighbors and getting nothing from this, right? They're getting 300 cars in this whole neighborhood. Imagine just living at the beginning of that neighborhood where the cars have to go through it. It's probably a parade of constant traffic through your neighborhood because of this one house. That's got to be so annoying to live there.
Annoying.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's the house down the street. And yeah, so you can see how it can be very annoying. But that's what happens when you let people film in the property, right? So I don't know. How would you feel if it was yours, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I would hate it if I was a neighbor. And then if I lived there, I would have a very tough decision to make because it's easy to say, oh, sell it. But if someone told me that, it's like, well, that's my house. Yeah. That's where I live. It's where I grew up. I can't just sell this.
You know what you do, though? I mean, you see how attractive it is. It's an Airbnb, man.
She could have, oh my gosh, she could have made so much on Airbnb.
So much money.
And what if someone buys it and turns it into an Airbnb? They put, fake money everywhere. They've got fake, crystal rocks everywhere.
There's so much money to be made.
They got the pool in the back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's worth $4 million, but man, if you can get this house and start Airbnb, it's full of money.
Airbnb should buy it, partner with Breaking Bad and just turn it into like the ultimate Airbnb of Breaking Bad.
What was that one company that we used to talk about that you buy shares of the house?
Oh, like Picasso.
Picasso, yeah,
not
yeah.
Picasso.
Picasso. Yeah,
yeah. That I think that would ultimately be the move. But yeah, I mean, it's super annoying. But once it gets to this point, you got to just
embrace it.
And I'm not saying embrace it like invite them over for dinner and let them in the house because that would be egregious.
Hey,
but
monetize it. How can you monetize this?
You got to monetize.
This is your opportunity
Instead
to make money.
Instead of selling for $4 million, she should have been using all this time to make money, not to ostracise the entire Breaking Bad community.
You want to do selfies in front of my thing? Here, donate, or whatever it is. I don't know.
All right, Shawn and I figured it out. We figured out what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Not for $4 million, but we'll see. All right, well, that'll just about do it for another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. If you enjoyed this, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already. And for Shawn and myself, thank you so much for watching. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Take care.